Hello everybody, welcome for my new lesson. So today we're still talking about materials and we will looking what can be the new materials in the future. Let's start.
Hi, it's Doug. In the last few mysteries, you've been learning about the different properties that materials have. But who comes up with materials? How do new materials get invented? Well, to give you a sense of this, let me tell you a true story about one material invention. This is a story about a scientist who worked at one of the greatest material invention laboratories in the world. It's a company called 3M. The scientists who work here have invented a lot of materials you know, some of which might even be sitting there in the room with you, like this one, Scotch tape. One of the 3M company's specialties, one of the things that they're best at, is making what we call adhesives, or sticky materials. It was in the 1960s that a scientist named Dr. Spencer Silver was attempting to make a stronger, super sticky kind of glue. But as he worked on this, he failed, and the glue he made was instead only sort of sticky. Now, for most people, it would have been tempting to throw your failed experiment into the garbage can and just call it a mistake. But that's not what this scientist did. Instead, Dr. Silver didn't give up on it right away. He played around with it a bit, and he noticed something interesting. Even though it would just kind of stick to one thing and not stick strongly, when he peeled it off, it was still kind of sticky. It kept its stickiness, even if it wasn't super strong. He found this unusual and interesting, so he showed it to other people in his laboratory. No one really knew what to do with it, and most people in the lab didn't care to think about it much more. Yet Dr. Silver felt sure there was some kind of problem that this sort of sticky glue could solve, even if no one could think of any ideas. Luckily, one day he found at least one scientist in the lab who agreed that he was onto something, and it was this guy. His name was Art Fry. "Let me borrow some of that stuff," he said. "I'll see if it gives me any ideas." Now, one thing you need to know about Art is that he had a hobby on the side. He loved to sing in a choir on the weekends. He and the choir would have songbooks in front of them to help them remember the words to sing, and they'd quickly switch between songs. So Art would use little pieces of paper as bookmarks to mark each song. But see, the bookmarks were always falling out. That's when Art had that classic moment for any great inventor. "Aha," he said. In that moment of inspiration, he realized that by putting some of the kind of sticky glue on the back of the paper, he could stick the bookmarks onto the page without permanently gluing them down. And since this kind of sticky glue would stay sticky over and over, he could just keep taking these bookmarks off and reapplying them as much as he wanted. Can you guess what this invention became? When Art took the idea back to the lab at 3M, they decided to try it out on some paper. But of all the different color papers they usually had available, that day there was only yellow paper left. And so these became the famous little yellow pads of paper with kind of sticky glue on the back. They called them Post-it notes. Post-it notes went on to become one of the most popular items in any office or school. Today, they sell them in lots of different colors. So that's the story of one famous material and how it got invented.
Okay. So imagine you were a scientist who got to make new material. What would you try to invent? So you can think about that, kid. What do you want to have? What can we invent?
So the invention of a new material, a glue that had the property of just being sort of sticky, made it possible to solve a problem no one had even thought to solve before. Post-it notes are an example of a recently invented material that you've actually seen. But now let me show you some new material inventions, some inventions you might not have seen before. Invented materials that we might use in the future, like this stuff. It looks like a sheet of glass, maybe the glass for a window or something. Now, when you think of glass, you think of its property of being see-through or transparent. But this is no ordinary glass. It's different. It's called electrochromic glass, and watch what it can do. Inside the glass is a material that can switch from being clear to white depending on whether electricity runs through it. So all you have to do is plug this kind of glass into an electrical switch, and then you can choose when it's see-through and when it's not. Think of the situations where we use ordinary glass and what you could do instead with this new electrochromic glass. Like instead of having curtains to cover your windows, you could just flip a switch and make the glass white when you want privacy. Or instead of having to cover your car windows when you park your car, you know your car gets really hot on the inside? Well, now you could just turn the windows white to keep out the hot sun. Right now, it's really expensive to make electrochromic glass, which is why you probably haven't seen it yet. But if someone figures out a way to make this more cheaply, in the future, we might just use this kind of glass all the time. Here's another material we might use in the future. When you get it really cold, it has this amazing property of being able to float or hover when held near a magnet. It's a special kind of material that scientists call a superconductor. Now, just like electrochromic glass, it's really expensive to make this stuff. But you can probably come up with some ideas of awesome things we'll be able to do if scientists discover a way to make superconductors more cheaply. Like one example is to use it as a new type of sports equipment. Like, can you imagine skateboarding, but instead of having wheels, it hovers on the ground instead? A hoverboard. Incredibly, there are already companies working on this. Check this out. A company called Lexus has made one of the very first hoverboards, which they showed off in this commercial using trained professional skateboarders. You can see it's pretty hard to maneuver. This is a skate park that has magnets underneath the concrete so that this new hoverboard can actually be used. Look at that, hovering. I thought you might want to see a little bit more from this commercial, so I'll show you another clip. Isn't it fun to think about what new materials might make possible? What problems will they solve? What kinds of new tools and devices will we create using newly invented materials? Whether it's windows that can turn on or off or skateboards that can hover. Maybe you can think of some ideas. What would you do with materials like these?
Yeah. Do you have any idea, kids? Like a material can levitate, or maybe a material for personal fly, for go to school by fly, or maybe a material who protects you against a virus, and you're sure that protects you very well. What do you think? If you have any ideas, you can send me a message.
In this activity, you're going to become an inventor. You'll come up with inventions that use a brand new material. Then you'll make a poster that explains how your invention will make life better or easier. Let's say that you and your class have been asked for help by her, Marcia. She's a scientist who works at Marvelous Materials Laboratory. Now this example is imaginary, but let's say that Marcia has created a new kind of glass that's really different from the glass we use today. It's different even from electrochromic glass. Now you know that glass has these properties. You can see through it, and it's hard and stiff, and if you drop it or you hit it, it breaks, shattering into lots of sharp pieces. But Marcia figured out a way to change glass so that it isn't hard and it doesn't break. Instead, this new kind of glass is stretchy and bouncy, like rubber. She invented rubbery glass. It still has the property of being see-through, but it also stretches out and then snaps back like a rubber band. And if you drop something made of rubbery glass, it bounces like a rubber ball. So Marcia has made this brand new material, rubbery glass, but she can't think of a cool way to use it. You and your class are going to help her. What could you invent using rubbery glass? What problems can this new material solve? To come up with ideas, let's start by thinking of all the different ways that we use regular glass today. What things are made out of regular glass? Make as long a list as you can. Your teacher will write them down on the board. We'll pause while you do that. Press play on this video when you're ready to keep going.
Okay.
Here's what Marcia could think of. She thought of jars that you can store things in. She thought of windows. She thought of eyeglasses, light bulbs, phones and computer screens, and car windshields. Are there any things on your list that Marcia left out? We'll pause while you check and read those out loud too.
Anything else, kid?
Now that you have your list, you're ready to think about rubbery glass. Imagine if all of these things weren't made out of normal glass. Imagine if instead they were bouncy or stretchy or both. Could being bouncy and stretchy make any of these things better than they are now? Thinking up new ideas takes practice, so let's consider the bottle first. Imagine a bottle that bounces. What ideas does that give you? Does that solve any problems? What could you use a bouncy jar for? We'll pause while your class discusses your ideas. Your teacher will write them down on the board.
What could you use a bouncy jar for? After everyone creates an invention, your teacher will choose a few students to present their invention. After each invention is presented, discuss what is one thing you really like about this invention. Can you think one thing that will improve this invention? So your work for today is try to invent new object, kids. If you have more time, yes, we have more time. Some videos. What is that? Readings.
The trampoline was dreamt up by a young boy. Already a keen tumbler, George Nissen was inspired by watching circus acrobats fall into their nets. He wished he could tumble in the air, but gravity was hard to shake. At college, he met a fellow tumbling enthusiast, Larry Griswold, and together they tried to build a bouncing machine. First attempts failed, but they persevered and succeeded, taking a bouncing, tumbling show on the road to Mexico, where George learned the Spanish for diving board, el trampolín. But back home, the trampolines didn't sell. Larry left the partnership, but George was determined to continue. He sold 100 to the army for parachute training and publicised his invention by bouncing on it with a kangaroo. Trampolines became a craze, and decades later, George came to Sydney to watch the sport he invented turn Olympic.
Okay, cool. So you can invent things, huh? Young kids invent something and get a lot of money after.
Behold, earmuffs. But where did they come from? Meet Chester Greenwood, born in Farmington, Maine in 1858. Growing up in Maine, 15-year-old Chester was accustomed to freezing winters. But he also had large ears that didn't handle the cold well, especially when he was ice skating. Sensitive to wool, he didn't want to wrap his head in a scarf like everyone else, so he decided a little innovation was in order. At home, Chester molded wire into ear-shaped loops and convinced his grandmother to sew over them soft muffs made of beaver fur and velvet. He then affixed a wire loop to the ear protectors and headed back out into the cold. The earmuffs were a great improvement, but they still flapped around a lot. Chester took a second stab at it, substituting a flexible steel band for the wire. Soon, other kids and adults were clamoring for a pair of their own. In 1877, at the tender age of 18, Chester acquired a patent for the earmuffs, which he dubbed Greenwood Champion Ear Protectors. He started producing them locally, and over the years they grew in popularity. In 1936, his factory hit peak production, producing 400,000 earmuffs. When he died in 1937, he had attained celebrity status in his home state. In 1977, the governor of Maine declared the first Saturday of every December Chester Greenwood Day.
Okay, last video, kids.
In my sister's room, they have an air hockey table, so I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could have that in my room? But I have a small bedroom, and I wouldn't be able to fit both in there. So my mom said, you're gonna have to make a choice. Is it gonna be the bed or the game table? Well, I picked the game table. She said, that's fine, but where are you gonna sleep? So that's when I had an idea, and the light bulb went off.
Oh. Let's see it, Kyle. So this is your bed,
Yeah.
right? What happens then?
Well, so you pull these pins. Give it a flip.
That is a great idea, Kyle.
Oh, thank you.
That's fantastic. What a wonderful idea. Very, very smart. Thank you.
It takes up less space.
Of course it does. We should do that with all of our furniture. With every single thing in the house, it should be something else underneath, don't you think? Work on it. All right. Hi, Gabby. How are you?
Good.
Nice to meet you. How old are you? Where do you live?
I'm 8 and I live in Marlborough, Connecticut.
Okay, and what grade are you in?
I'm in 3rd grade.
3rd grade. All right, let me see what you have. What'd you invent and how come?
I invented the fashion friend because in the morning I had a problem.
You had a problem, and this is called the fashion
Friend.
friend. Okay, let's see the fashion friend. The fashion friend. So you'd put to see what it looks like on you before you put it on you. You don't want to walk out of the house until you see what other people see. There's mirrors, but you can't always. You can't count on mirrors all the time. That's a great idea, your fashion friend. That's beautiful. Thank you, Gabby. All right. You can change it, and you can try different things on and go, well, what if I wore that with a jean? That's great. It saves you time. Put it on the fashion friend. Hi, you must be Kyle.
Yep.
Hi, Kyle. How old are you? Where do you live? What grade are you in?
I'm 11 years old. I'm in the 5th grade, and I live in Marlborough, Connecticut.
All right, great. And what do you have here?
Laptop levitator.
Laptop levitator. Okay, and what made you come up with this idea?
My mom's friend has back problems, and she has to lay down for an extended period to heal her back and get it realigned. And she's a writer, so now she can lay down and write.
Okay, let's see it.
Voila!
Wow. You want to demonstrate it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. That's a great invention. Thank you, Kyle.
Okay, kids, thank you for watching the video and see you next time. Bye-bye.